Okay, so this is how I sculpted Dr. Girlfriend's head. And you can see here we're starting with a very rough sphere, and now I'm just putting in the hair. And this is all going to be box modeled, at least to the start, right? I just like to get in the basic shapes, with a subsurface cube or whatever, and then you just move the vertices around. You get it as close as you can. I find that subsurface shapes always kind of have sort of a certain they can only get into certain kinds of shapes, right? So all I'm trying to do here is just get it as close as I can, and then I will round everything out and fix it in. I will fix it in sculpting, right? So it's basically just pushing around vertices, maybe getting a few extra loop cuts and whatnot until we're ready to move on. Okay, and here I think we're about to start in on the face. So I remesh the sphere, and we're just going to smooth it out. And I wish I could tell you my faces start out beautiful and then just go to gorgeous. But that's just not the way it works for me. I don't know. Maybe some other people can handle that. I always need to feel it around a little bit. And especially at first, when you're just kind of gouging out eye sockets and pulling up noses, it doesn't always look so great in the beginning. And you just got to work through that. Just got to think of it as a rough. And keep working on it until you get what you like. This is a female figure, so usually you want to think small for everything except the eyes. And, unfortunately, Blender sculpting, about 5% of it maybe, is actually Blender. Right? Learning the tools, understanding how to use them, how to get around Blender's, issues and some of the things that it doesn't do as good as some of the other things. The rest of it really is just basic skills that you would use for any medium, right? Proportions, knowing anatomy, getting everything in there correctly. Sculpting in any medium is kind of the same. Like, my stuff doesn't look any different if I sculpt in clay than if I do in Blender, because it's basically using the same skills but with just a different medium. And it kind of lends, things to look sort of the same. My work is my work no matter what form I choose to do it in. So if you find you're having trouble, there's always things you can look up on YouTube, and I'll be glad to answer any questions if I can. But for the most part, a lot of it's going to come back down to, anatomy. Anatomy is pretty much everything in sculpting the human form. Anatomy and proportions. You can get away with some sort of stylized anatomy. There are sculptors that do that, and it looks cool. But, you're relying on your style to kind of fake it through. But, each artist also has their own anatomy. It all starts out in realism, but we all have our own little things that we do that's different from real life, especially when you're dealing with cartoony things like this. But take it one at a time. And, I find a lot of remeshing helps. You start out with a low-level mesh, not as dense, and then as you work through it, you remesh to a denser and denser mesh until you get to the end. And you want to save the densest mesh for the end, because unless you're lucky enough to have a $6,000 computer, most of us don't have that, right? We might have a little extra RAM, but unless you have the graphics card, unless you have the RAM, unless you have the processor, which in sculpting is king, the processor, you got to work around those things. And I will talk a little bit more in the next sculpt about the decimate modifier. That is very helpful. But here you see me putting in the eyes, right? Start to lay that out and get them in there. Something I didn't notice until after I had finished this sculpt, and I'm going to try on the next one, is my bottom lid is way too open, right? It kind of gives her this sort of surprised look, like her eyes are bulging. Bottom lid, I think, on most people is a little farther up, right? It's not quite as far down. You want to move it up just a little more. Not quite halfway, you know, but a little under that. I'm going to try that next time and see if it looks a little more natural. And here's another good thing. You can always go into edit mode, hit on X-ray, select a whole chunk of mesh, and then just move it around, enlarge it, reduce it a little bit to get your proportions in there right. Because even though the head is large and those eyes are big, there's still a certain amount of proportions that you have to keep right? You want to basically make sure the eyes are in the middle of the skull, the bottom of the nose is between the eyes and the chin, and the mouth is between the nose and the chin. And the ears start at the top of the eyes. Those are proportions you always want to work in there, regardless of what you do with the face, right? Unless you're doing, like some sort of, like older people, as you grow older, the cartilage in your nose swells, your ears swell. So proportions change a little bit. Things look a little different. And here you see me doing the ears. The ears I actually had on a mirror modifier. And I'm trying to use the mirror modifier more, but I'm just so not used to using it. But I want to try and speed up my sculpting. Right? It's taking me too long. And here you see I'm doing the eyebrows, and I just went with simple eyebrows, just a cube that I extruded and bent, subsurf too, of course. But the eyebrows are usually pretty easy. And that's really all there is to Dr. Girlfriend. Doing her face. Right? Don't forget to, like, subscribe. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. I'm always happy to help if I can. I don't know everything, but I've been doing this for a bit. So I know a few things, maybe a couple, but I can help if I can. And there you go. See you next video.